And I get asked this question a lot, why exactly are we doing Radio Mala? And I think in a very fundamental way, the answer is that Nepal's been through quite a lot in the recent past. And oh, by the way, there's a devastating earthquake that as they're struggling through some of the challenges that they have in Nepal, that is going to destroy the nation, the capital. Many people will die. During that time, if they have a disaster communication network based on amateur radio, we know that we'll be able to save many, many lives, perhaps thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. And I actually lived in Nepal 10 years ago for an entire year teaching at the university. And I saw firsthand with the cramped construction, the unreinforced brick building that existed, that many people would die. And I've been through some of the streets that actually will crumble when this event happens. When I returned to the United States, it became very clear to me that something had to be done, something meaningful. And we, those of us who are outside of Nepal, can actually help Nepal, work with Nepal to get something done meaningful, get it done quickly, and execute this project that eventually became Radio Mala. Many people, not just from a Nepali background like myself, but my very close friends in the Silicon Valley, who have never been to Nepal, became impassioned with this goal of saving lives in Nepal by utilizing their passions, the technological backgrounds that they had, and understanding very well that this is something, this is not rocket science. This technology has been around for over 100 years. This is something we really can do. We have the technology, we have the expertise. Everything is in place right now other than the funding. And one of the questions that I get asked is, well, Nepal and the developing world is such a difficult place to do business. Now, how are you so confident that you can actually get this done? What about sustainability? Well, we have a great deal of experience in making projects in Nepal successful over multiple years, over a decade as a matter of fact. When I worked in Nepal, a laboratory, one of the world's most sophisticated research and teaching laboratories, was actually donated by Agilent Technologies. And that laboratory and the program that we established there is ongoing now for over 14 years. We also, through CAN USA, installed the first split-band amateur radio UHF-VHF repeater in the history of Nepal. We did this in 2011. And right now, it's the only split-band UHF-VHF repeater that's providing service in Nepal. Radio Mala is a natural extension of these efforts that we've already started. We know we can do this because we've already done it in the past, and we've demonstrated that it can be successful and sustained in Nepal for a period of over a decade. And the partnerships that we have within Nepal are with some of the most reputable institutions and some of the most talented technologists that live in Nepal today. And we have institutional support in Nepal, not just individual support. One of the questions that people ask is what happens to an environment like Nepal when the experts leave? Well, in this case, we're actually grooming and training the experts who are resident in Nepal. And it's not just a single individual, but institutions that we're training to help install, repair, and maintain these infrastructures. And it's a long-term relationship. And the people within Nepal and outside of Nepal are impassioned to go ahead and make this happen. But we can't do this alone. We just need a little bit more help from you.
My involvement with Radio Mala came about through both the Wireless Communications Alliance and with Baynet, and my friendship with Suresh. I believe the Radio Mala is very important because bringing amateur radio into a country is one of the key ways that both technological and economic development can be accomplished. From a disaster response perspective, Baynet is very active in Northern California. We were the system that the Red Cross used during the San Bruno gas pipeline explosion when communications were necessary to coordinate disaster relief, relocation of residents, shelters, and other activities that the Red Cross engaged in during that disaster. Radio Mala is really taking the architecture of Baynet and replicating it in Nepal. There's nothing different about what we're doing there versus what we're doing here. All of the things that we've learned here in Northern California through Baynet are being recreated in Nepal through Radio Mala. Baynet remains committed to Radio Mala, including a long-term ongoing collaboration regarding technology transfer, understanding and taking the learning that we have here in Northern California for disaster response and translating that into disaster response technologies for Nepal. Bayonet remains in regular contact with people like Dr. Pandey and the amateur radios of Nepal. Our efforts are going to continue to bring technology and understanding into the efforts that are being made there for disaster communications, technology, and economic development. Your donations to Radio Mala will be amplified through the efforts of Northern California, through the Wireless Communications Alliance, and through Bayonet to ensure that this technology is implemented in the most efficient manner possible.
I'm Rick Santina. I'm part of the Cisco Disaster Incident Response Team. As part of that team, I've been all over the world involved in disasters and responding to things like fires, floods, earthquakes, and man-made events. Communications is critical. The first part of every incident begins with local communications. This is not just a quick effort to shove some equipment out into the field. This is a sustained effort with resources both in the United States, in the Silicon Valley, and in Nepal working together. Leading technologists have come up with an infrastructure to help sustain the technology that's being put into the field to provide a world-class communications network for Nepal. We used to say that aid could get to a place in 2 or 3 days, but the new normal is an aid relationship where it can take days or weeks for critical aid to get into a heavily impacted disaster area. It is of vital importance that people take it upon themselves to provide their own communications, their own support, and their own infrastructure to be self-reliant and not depend on aid that can take days or weeks to come into the valley. The partnership that we've launched to put technology to build a communications infrastructure for the people of Nepal and to allow those folks to sustain their own infrastructure. This truly is a partnership where the people here are training, educating, and helping to sustain resources in Nepal. Did you know that every 75 years the Kathmandu Valley is struck by a magnitude 8.0 earthquake or greater? And guess what? It's been 79 years and we're overdue in Kathmandu. Are you prepared to sustain yourself and your family while the aid is coming? Help us provide a communications infrastructure for the people of Nepal and the Kathmandu Valley. Hi, I'm Rick Santina. I'm a disaster technologist with Cisco Systems, and I'm part of the Radio Mala program. I want to talk to you about being prepared for disaster. Now, most of us are familiar with our cellular phone system. Many of you are probably not familiar with amateur radio. When the next big disaster comes, this system will probably not be functional, not only in the Kathmandu Valley, but perhaps all across Nepal. Radio Mala is helping to build a system that will use amateur radio, these devices, which are completely independent of a major phone or technology network and will be functional in the event of a disaster. Not only are we helping provide the technology, we are sharing best practices to help the people of Kathmandu through the Tribhuvan University be able to grow, maintain, operate, and even repair these devices themselves in Kathmandu and for the people of Nepal. Please support Radio Mala to make sure you have a sustainable network that will be functional for you, as opposed to something that will become non-functional in the event of the major disaster. Thank you. Individual repeater sites that have been stationed around the valley have UHF or VHF, or maybe both, radio capabilities, plus independent power supplies through either the use of solar, batteries, mains power, a generator, or generally a mix of 3 or 4 of the above. Additionally, we have an independent linking radio that lets this site communicate with the other independent sites around the valley. The radio and controller are completely autonomous of any form of centralized network, therefore making this a completely resilient system in the event of a disaster. Contrast that with a cellular phone system. A cell site relies on the towers, just as we do, but then there's a piece of heavy switching equipment with power, typically backed up for maybe a few hours, and then a connection to the phone network. This is the weak point of this system. This network, whenever there's an earthquake, the first thing people do is pick up the phone and try to call each other, and this network will become oversubscribed. It also is dependent on this link being available, which could be damaged as part of the infrastructure destroyed in an earthquake. So these systems, because they do require centralized management, become very unreliable after a major disaster. Whereas if we go back up to the top, because these systems are independent, they're resilient and will stand up through your earthquake and continue to provide you emergency communications.
My name is Raja Adhikari, and professionally I work in area of finance. I'm a corporate finance. I've been working for almost 15, 16 years, and primarily in the Silicon Valley. I came to know about the Radio Mala program when I was in one of the first mock Radio Mala, sort of communication trial. I was invited to participate, and I came in, and I was very impressed, by the level of preparation went into, launching the Radio Mala and the success that they had shown, in which they were able to communicate directly, through computer to the people on the street of Kathmandu through only simply, ham radio. And when I saw it, it really dawned to me that the Radio Mala program is indeed a very viable, option when in emergency such as earthquake, like in a country like Nepal.
When I see a country like Nepal, where amateur radio is really in its infancy, where before the advent of this project there were a handful of licensed radio amateurs, and now we're growing the technology, a technology that we've been using for years in the US and throughout much of the world, is being adopted as a green field by folks who are excited and eager to learn and eager to grow and eager to build this disaster network so that they can help the folks of the Kathmandu Valley and all the people of Nepal. And for someone like me, that's just plain cool. To be able to have a whole new green field to deploy a technology and to be able to help out is an amazing opportunity. And it's a privilege to work with Can, with Suresh, and the rest of the folks on the Radio Mala project.
One of the things that I wanted to mention that all of us know is intuitively true, and it's also very tragic, but it's an important point for people to understand. The $50,000 that we raise and we use to execute this project now is going to be far more valuable than $500,000 or even more, or even millions of dollars one day afterwards. Because having an infrastructure in place now will allow people to save lives in the immediate aftermath. The first 24 to 48 hours are really the seminal time when you can save lives. After that, you're in the recovery mode. And the $50,000 that we use to implement this program now will save far more lives than you could save even with hundreds of thousands of dollars subsequent to the event itself. So please join us.
Like in Kathmandu Valley, that will be fully operational during these disasters also. And this type of Radio Mala is not currently in existence in Nepal, and once this project is Radio Mala is finished, then it can be a puzzle piece to extend the amateur radio technology across different parts of the Nepal, as well as it can be an example for other places in the world also.
Why is Radio Mala different from other efforts to expand amateur radio in Nepal?
Radio Mala is different from other because of its simplicity, At first, what we have to understand is we're not trying to introduce a new technology here. So the system we are going to deploy is affordable, and it can be easily repaired, sustained, and it is already functional in the Silicon Valley, in the Baynet network. And the another thing, like why Radio Mala is like different is like we have the support of many advocates and engineers from the Silicon Valley, and what this makes is difference is usually when we do a project, so suppose I am the project leader, right? So if I go outside, so there will be no one to carry on this carry the project, right? So actually the project becomes dead. But since now, like, our system is supported by the Radiomala is unique because of its like long-term sustainable support that we will receive from the Silicon Valley.
And something more, like you saying 2-3 sentences, basically, and also said that, you know, because if somebody leaves.
Yeah, like, and the Radiomala is also different. Like, usually what happens in Nepal is, like, when you have a project, right, and the person who is working in the main person who is working in that project leave, the project becomes like dead, like there's no one to carry on. But I think in Radiomala we will not have that problem because we already have like supports from all the advocates and engineers from the Silicon Valley, and they will be continually supporting us, right? Even if, like, I'm the leader of project leader of Radiomala, and if I leave also, so still the person who will come, he will get the continuous support. So that is the main difference. My name is Sanjeev Prasad Pandey. I'm actually assistant professor at Institute of Engineering, Tribhuvan University. I've been working in Department of Electronics Engineering since last 12 years. And currently I am the master coordinator for one of our master program in this department. And I am the project leader of our project Radiomala.
Could you tell us what is Radiomala?
Radiomala is interconnected sets of amateur repeaters, which has been like duplicated. We are trying to duplicate it in the similar way as there exists the Bennett repeater system, Bennett network in the Silicon Valley in US.
Why is it important for Nepal?
First of all, like, throughout many disasters in the world, we have seen that we have seen and known that the amateur radio technology is a life-saving technology. You know, it's a proven life-saving technology. And Nepal, as you know, like, it's very prone to disaster. There are many Nepal is prone to disasters like flood, landslides, fires, earthquake. So, and during these massive disasters, all the commercial communication technology that we have now frequently they will surely go down, you know. And at that time, for communication, you need the communication, you might need the amateur repeaters, right? So what we are doing in Radiomala is we are going to install the repeater, amateur radio repeaters, and these will be fully operational within the Kathmandu Valley during massive disasters also. And this kind of system doesn't presently exist in Nepal. And once we complete this Radiomala project, so it can be a puzzle piece to develop the amateur radio technology across the different part of Nepal, as well as it can be an example to other parts of the world also, you know.
Why is Radiomala different from other efforts to expand amateur radio in Nepal?
Radiomala is different because of its simplicity, you know. We have to understand here that like with Radiomala, we are not going to introduce any new technology in Nepal. The technology the system which we are going to deploy during the Radiomala project is affordable. It can be easily repaired, sustained, and the most important thing is it is already functional in the Bennett network in the Silicon Valley. And another why Radiomala project is different is that usually in Nepal, like when you start a project and the main person who is leading the project leaves the country, then the project becomes stranded, you know. So in Radiomala, we have a continuous support of the advocates and engineers from the Silicon Valley. And another thing is we have like all our system development and component repair, long-term use has been supported by the members of BNet, one of the leading amateur radio network, network technology things. So I think even if anybody leaves, so there will be no difference. And the most important thing is like we have a continuous sustainable support from the Silicon Valley. So, thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Thank you.
I'm Pradeep Vaidya. I'm a professor in Department of Surgery and a chairman of Disaster Committee in Trivandrum University Teaching Hospital. And I conduct a HOPE course called Hospital Preparedness for Emergencies in Nepal.
Could you please tell us, like, why is disaster communications important for the medical community?
In a country like ours, which is very resource poor, the mobilization of resources would make a lot of impact on disaster risk management, where saving lives would be a priority. On that basis, the communication would be a crucial. I think we're getting too far off. Could I start? Yeah. Okay. In a resource poor country like ours, resources are very important. But to get the resources at appropriate places, communication would become a very crucial point. And in a country like ours, where even regular days the communication is very bad, the mobiles are very difficult to connect, the landlines are very bad, I think all these would collapse and there will not be any communication. This is why I think, should I add that radio mala now?
No, not now.
Okay, okay. So that,
Yeah, you can generate it.
so this is why I think disaster risk in disaster risk management in Nepal, at least for now, communication would be a vital priority in context.
Yeah, during different like disasters, earthquake, and different times. Like we have gone through a lot of natural calamities as well. So why do you think at these times the disaster communications is really important for the medical community? During different times like earthquake, 2011, or other times, like, do you really think that disaster communication is important?
Yes, that is why the government also is in a context of a large disaster. The government is also planning to have an early deployment system for medical personnel and equipments because of mobilization of resources. Now, all this depends on communication to find out where the resources are required, how to send it, and if communication collapses, I mean, you have a good resource in one place. Trivandrum University Teaching Hospital have a lot of doctors, and nothing has happened here. But if another hospital requires doctors, if you do not communicate and find out, we will not be sending people out there. So that for that basic saving lives only, you require you require disaster risk management communication as a vital part. In communication in disaster risk management is very important because we have seen in 2011 in Nepal where there was an earthquake, the communication collapsed and we could not know what was happening. Similarly, even now, if there's a major disaster, most of the communication would collapse, and then we would not know who's controlling what is happening and what's going on. More importantly, we are a resource poor country, so if where resources what we have, if we can mobilize it appropriately, we may save large number of lives. This is why I would think communication becomes very important on mobilizing resources, human resources, equipments, and obviously commanding and coordinating in disaster risk management. So someone, you can edit it, right?
Why is Radio Mala important for the medical community in Nepal?
Well, all the commercial communication systems like NTC, Ncell and all, they have difficulty as it is even now. When I tried to call you last time, it took me 2 hours because there are always communication problems. If this happens in disaster, all these will collapse. I think I'm being too personalized, but all this, I think I'll start again. Yeah. Radio Mala is important. Radio Mala is important because all these commercial communications will collapse in disaster. Even in regular times, it is not working at the appropriate level. So in disaster, when all these collapses, the simple system of ham radio with Radio Mala could make a lot of difference in saving lives. That much, and I can add later if you want anything else.
Exactly, and also like basically Radio Mala in terms of communication, in terms of flow of information.
I can just add a few sentences here. Radio Mala, I think it will be important at disaster risk management communication system because it is simple, can be used easily, not technically difficult, and in case of disaster, it should work perfectly. It has been tried out in other countries and it has worked well. And I believe that technical support is good throughout the year, even if Nepalese could. I think they have gone too far. Just add a few more. If all the hospitals connect to Radio Mala, I think we'll at least have some communication system within the hospitals, and the government may also use that as a part of a system. And also international agencies can also use that as a very simple method of communication between Nepal and others when there's a large disaster and all the commercial communications disappear.